What does mindset have to do with it? We're talking music and mental health right now. Hi, welcome to Musicians on the Record, the show where we bring you the musician's story, and I am super psyched. Today we are debuting a new episode, a new segment on the show. It's called the Rock Therapy Show. It's not talk therapy, it's rock therapy, conversations with musicians around music, mental health, motivation, and mindset. I'm your host, David Ward, licensed psychotherapist and unlicensed drummer, and I couldn't think of a better guest to have on the first episode of Rock Therapy than the main motivator himself, the global ambassador of drumming and the author of a book. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff today, The Cycle of Self-Empowerment. Don Famularo, welcome to the show.
David, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to sit down and talk to you, man. Thanks.
Absolutely. It's always a blast to have you here. So, I was curious, I want to talk about your book, but to talk about the inspiration of this, you've been teaching and playing music for over 50 years, teaching people, helping people, motivating folks. You must have seen a need in the music community because you've written all kinds of other books, music education books, but this one is different where it's motivation and empowering. What inspired you to write this in the first place?
Hi, Dave, great question. It's kind of interesting. As a child, when I was younger, I had a tremendous stammering challenge. Right. It was really bad. I have two older brothers that are a year apart that were very popular in school. My younger sister is very, very talented. And I kind of, in the middle there, kind of got a little lost at what I did. And I had a stammering challenge. I didn't speak that well. I was not a great student in school. And I wore glasses. So at 8 years old, when you're wearing glasses, you get, at that time, in the 50s and early 60s, you were teased a lot. So by being teased, and I couldn't play a lot of sports because of my glasses. I played basketball once. I broke the glasses in the first quarter of playing. So it was just always a challenge to be involved with being actively involved. So I put my energy towards music. I was inspired to hear Ringo play on the Ed Sullivan Show in February of 1964, and that inspired me to want to play drums. So drumming became my outlet, and because of that drumming outlet, it gave me such a strength and such a level of confidence that I began to have more confidence in myself, and my stammering started going away. And I slowly began to focus on speaking slowly, more articulately and clearly, because when I practiced, I had to practice slow and articulate. Right. So I just took many of the practicing skills and applied them towards my life. So that was the first thing that I saw, that I had a confidence challenge, low self-esteem, and music started to really open me up. So now here I am, now forward many, many years. I'm traveling around the world, opening up clinic tours with Billy Cobham and Simon Phillips and Lenny White and all these great, great drummers. And I'm in front of crowds speaking and inspiring people and talking. And many of the people that I would meet in my global travels, and I've been traveling the globe for well over 35 years. And it's probably closer now to 40 years when I think about it, which is kind of crazy. And in the intensity of that traveling, I've met so many people that I sensed had the same challenges that I had with low self-esteem, lack of confidence. They doubted themselves that they could be good at what they did, whether it was a drummer. I can't be, whether he was even a musician, a bass player. Well, I'm not that good. I'm from a small town. Nothing ever happens in this small town. So whether it was where they lived or every excuse in the world came out for these people to be disempowered. And that's the word that kept on hitting me. These people were disempowered. They were not empowering themselves. So just in the course of time in my lessons, and I started teaching at the age of 17. So for now, 49 years I've been teaching. And you kind of learn on these one-on-one lessons through all these years that there's got to be a way that I can reach each of these students. I've got to kind of step into their world. I've got to get to know them and find out how they learn. And I've got to find out some of the challenges that they have as individuals. When I find out those challenges and how they learn, I then begin to realize that there are ways that I can give them tools to empower themselves.
Okay. What are some of those tools?
So, and that's where it started. So what it came down to was I started understanding that, I had to first make them understand what passion was. That they came to me, they had this passion to play music, this strong desire to want to be the best at what they can do, and to to be the best of who they can be. It wasn't about being as good as anybody else. It was trying to be the best that they can be. So we had to keep on focusing on, don't compare yourself to other drummers. Listen, if I compared myself to Buddy Rich or Steve Gadd in the early days when I started, I would have been setting myself up for failure.
Right.
So I just allowed those players to inspire me, and I would try to steal from them what I can steal from them that I can adapt to my own playing. It might have been a way that they sat, their cymbal set up, the way they grooved, a fill that they played, an idea that they articulated, the form of how they played the song, all these different things. I would take a little bit out of it. And although I couldn't play it exactly like them, I kind of found my own way of how I can figure it out. Yeah. So I began to understand that passion was the first motivating force. There's got to be that constant desire to want to continue to get better. So that was the common denominator that I noticed with all of my students. And then I just kept on realizing that there were certain tools that you needed, and there were certain tools like discipline and perseverance and accountability and responsibility, just certain words that I felt had to be a fundamental area of us to learn. So I began to write these notes down, and then I realized you had to have like a vision and a plan and like you had to understand what your dream was. So all these words were words that I was just kind of putting into the field of teaching. What's your dream? What do you see your vision to be? What are some of your goals? How strong of a personality do you have that you can persevere by sticking with something? Do you even understand what perseverance is? Right. Which means to never give up. So I kept on throwing these words out and using these words, and I found out that the students were adapting to it and making change. They were growing and becoming more empowered. This was an incredible journey. So at that point, one night it's like 3:00 in the morning, and I always have pencil and paper next to my bed, and now I have my phone next to my bed. So 20 some odd years ago, it was pencil and paper. Now it's my phone. I wake up and thumb my way through notes. And in the middle of the night, I kind of woke up and I saw this vision of a graph in my head. And so I got up and I quickly drew out what it was. And it started with passion on the bottom. And then I wrote a couple words. Then I wrote an arrow that went up to the dream and the vision. Then I put some goals in there. And it was this kind of crude drawn document that just really looked, like some kind of hieroglyphic, out of a pyramid somewhere, Yeah. We come out. I put it down on the paper, I finish it, I put it down, I go back to bed. I wake up the next morning, and I start looking at this, and I start to fine-tune what it is. I fine-tuned the arrows. I cleaned it up a little. There were certain words that I wrote. I rewrote the words so it was clearer. I added a couple more words. So I put this together, and I came up with this graph that kind of looked similar to this.
Yeah, I've got it up on the screen right now, Dom. We've got the graphic up. So
excellent. Thank you. So with that, it kind of looked like that. So at one point, it didn't have a title to it. So my wife, Charmaine, says, well, what? I said, look at this here. She goes, well, what is it? I said, well, it's kind of like when I teach, I kind of use this stuff, and it's kind of like a formula for me to use it with my teaching, like a graph that I could use that I can point to that will help me teach better. So she goes, well, what exactly is it? I said, well, when I look through it with the passion and the dream and vision and these words, I said, it's kind of like it's a chart of empowerment. Yeah. So she goes, empowerment. She goes, interesting. She goes, well, so you're empowering the student. I said, well, it's not, well, the chart, yes, I'm trying to empower them, but I'm trying to get them to empower themselves. So she goes, well, it's kind of like a cycle then. I said, yeah, it's a cycle. So she said, so it's basically a cycle of self-empowerment. And I went, I'm going to steal that from you.
That's good stuff. Right?
All right. And that's really kind of how it started. So I wrote down the cycle of self-empowerment, and then in time started fine-tuning more of the word. And if you look at the graph, you'll see some of the words, that when we start from your passion, your fuel, that's the flame. That's what's going to, that's what's going to bring everything. You got to keep on fueling that flame. So how do you put fire on the flame? How do you put, logs? How do you put gasoline? How do you keep fueling that flame? Well, to me, it was the more I played with bands, I got more excited. The more I listened to music, on my headphones, it inspired me. The more I went to hear live music, it kept on fueling that flame. So by performing, listening, and attending live concerts, that was my formula of me continuing to fuel my passion.
Love it.
So once I had the passion, then that led to the entire graph.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing your story of overcoming that challenge. You told me this a couple of weeks ago, and I was blown away because your voice is an amazing voice. You've got a great radio and TV voice, and you read all of this stuff. You write the books, but you put them into voice. You're leading these panels, the sessions.org. People check them out. So to hear your story of a guy who I see is just like really powerful voice and presentation, that challenge that you had with the stuttering or the stammering, I think it's really powerful. These principles that you're talking about, you've been teaching others. Who taught you these principles?
It's a great question. A lot of this, and as many of my friends say, they say, Dom, you have a great face for radio. So I get that a lot.
Me too.
I get that a lot. But what it came down to was, I got to throw it back to my parents. I mean, they were teachers that didn't know they were teaching. They were philosophers that didn't know they were giving wisdom out in some of their senses. They were guidances of moral compasses that always made decisions based off of other people's feelings and surroundings that was best for everyone, selfless people as opposed to being selfish people. And that's just, my mom and dad were just like that. So you couldn't help but, that's where I kind of got a lot of this from. My dad was a World War II veteran and became a fireman. He was an active fireman for 65 years up until the day he passed away. Wow. And a volunteer fireman, so never getting paid, just volunteering. Amazing. In his local community, and to a point where they went and they dedicated a firehouse after him. There's a big bronze plaque for my dad, which is so beautiful. Wow. In Baldwin, Long Island, on Baldwin Avenue. If anyone goes to that area and goes to the Host Company No. 3 Firehouse, they'll see a huge plaque. That is my dad. Wow. And it really is kind of amazing to see his effort as a firematic skilled person. But he was an auto mechanic. So not only did he have his own business with his brothers, but he also repaired fire trucks. So my father was actively involved in fixing these fire trucks. So he actually became a great chief. As a chief, he knew the fire trucks so well because he built them. Right.
That's amazing.
So he knew how to control, when a fire happened. He was very successful in what he did as a firematic, technician. And my mom was a singer and with her sisters, and they had gotten the first call back to a Broadway show. So there was always music in our household. And when my grandfather, an old school Italian that came over from Italy back in the early 1900s, when he heard that these three girls were going to go and go, that he didn't know they did the audition. So when they had gotten the call back, he forbid for them to go. Oh. And then they didn't go. And I'm sure they would have got the role because they sang great harmonies, and it was just the way it was back at that time. So, my mom still having music around the household and having a loving Italian family that every Sunday all the relatives came over to our house, and there was a party every Sunday where we played with our cousins. We brought out our instruments, we played. So it was that was all going on. You couldn't help but understand words like integrity, words like dedication, words like honesty, trust. And those were all the words that I put on my cycle of self-empowerment. Those were words that I witnessed and words that became the example of living a productive and healthy life.
It's amazing. With helping so many folks that you have in teaching and coaching and motivating, you've named a couple of common themes that musicians struggle with. What are some other ones that you see or you've seen over the years, whether mental health or the motivation or that mindset of the whatever fear of judgment or comparanoia or giving up? What are some of those common other themes that you've seen with musicians?
Well, there are many of them. First of all, because we're involved in the arts, and anyone that's involved in the arts, there are always challenges. You know, many great comedians have had very difficult lives, and they've had very sad and challenging lives, and their comedy came out of that challenging times. And many great artists like Da Vinci and Michelangelo, their lives were not easy. And within the challenges of their lives, they took it out on the sculptures, they took it out on their paintings, and they gave us art that to this day, 500 years later, when I go to Italy and go to these places and see, and go to the church where Leonardo da Vinci painted the Last Supper on the wall of a church, and the church survived through World War II when the Brits bombed the heck out of Italy, that wall lasted. And they built a museum around it, and I'm sitting there watching this painting, and you have to go through this threshold of different rooms to get your temperature to your body low enough so when you walk in the room, it's temperature controlled. And I'm looking at this 500-year-old wall that Da Vinci painted, and when you read and understand the life of Da Vinci, of what he went through, it was challenging. So musicians now, as we're in the arts, we have these challenges. There's first the challenge of a lack of confidence, that maybe I can't do this. And once you say that and the doubt is put in, that slows down the learning process, and that cheats the world of future great artists. The world gets cheated when we think that way.
That's a great way to put it, because we don't think about it, that we're more self-centered. We don't think about that others are losing out if we don't share our gift, right?
That I can stand in front of a Da Vinci or a Michelangelo. I can go to the Sistine Chapel and tilt my head back and look at the ceiling and see this work of art that is given to us, is that 500 years later, I am still getting enjoyment from this art. That's what's happening as musicians when we play music. There will be, when we're all long gone, there'll still be Mozart and there'll still be Stevie Wonder. So that's the gift. So when a musician doubts themselves, Andre Segovia doubted himself when he was younger, and he went on to overcome that and become one of the greatest, classical guitar players. That to this day, when you hear a Segovia play, you get chills when you just hear the flawlessness and the expression and the emotion coming out of an acoustic guitar. It's incredible. So what musicians do also is I see, we get to escape some of the challenges that we have and some of the loneliness of being a musician. That's when drugs and alcohol steps in. And once drugs and alcohol steps in, I never did. I got drunk once in my life on my 23rd birthday. I was playing at a club in California, and people were coming around. We were actually playing, and the owner of the club came in and had a double shot of tequila and said, "We got to drink this with Dom and toast of his 23rd." And I drank the shot down and bit the lemon and licked the salt, whatever the hell the routine was. and he came up, and then a few minutes later, the manager came up, and then the head waiter came up, and then one of the guests came up. Well, after my fourth double shot of tequila, man, I was wasted. Sure. And I was so drunk and so out of it, and it was such a terrible feeling. And the next day I was out of it, and I had to play the next day. And so for the next 3 days, I said, I will never do this again. Yeah. I don't care who wants to buy me a drink. And I have never been drunk since then. So I saw the effects that I was working this hard, practicing and trying to be a good musician. And the drinking did not assist me to achieve the goal that I was trying to achieve.
Yeah. So let me ask you about that, because that may come easy for you, but I talk with other folks who, whether musicians or otherwise, if they're on the road especially, somebody says, "Hey, let me buy you a drink." How do you handle that? How do you respond and sort of keep that within yourself that can help others?
Yeah, well, the first thing, when someone wants to buy me a drink, I always thank them, and I order a cranberry juice or an orange juice, or an orange juice mixed with cranberry juice. And even though the person might be drinking a beer or a mixed drink, when I get my drink, the conversation stays enthusiastic. It stays excited. People don't even notice that I don't want to, now, I may have, maybe if I have 6 or 7 glasses of wine in a year's time, that's a lot. If I have that many beers, if it's a hot summer day and I'm in Germany or Belgium, you better believe I'm going to have a beer there, but I'll have one beer. It'll be a smaller beer. I'll enjoy it, and that'll be it. And it's usually on a day off. So I try to control it to the point that I don't want to lose my mental facility for as hard as I've worked to obtain my craft, and my career. Now, with drugs, I never did the drug thing. I mean, it never, because like when I saw friends of mine that did the drug thing, they were sloppy, they didn't play as well, they showed up late, all the qualities that I didn't want to be associated with.
Right.
So we have to make a conscious decision how we want to lead our life. Now, here I was practicing several hours a day, studying with these great teachers, the Joe Morellos, the Jim Chapins, the Shelley Manns, the Max Roaches, Papa Joe Jones, all these great players. I'm spending money on working with these guys. I didn't want to get involved with drugs because I felt that the money that I spent on the drugs, I could spend on a couple more lessons.
Right. Or some gear, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, and a lot of my friends did not have great gear. We're not taking lessons. We're doing the drug thing, showing up late, not playing as great. So, and they were great musicians. So what I realized at a young age is I never saw a success story come out of drugs and alcohol.
Right.
I never saw someone doing it and playing at the top of their game, showing up on time, building a brilliant career. I never witnessed that in my lifetime. So with that, I just realized that I have to make a conscious choice. There's a chapter in my book, chapter 8, called Choice Power. It's actually a chapter that Charmaine, my wife, discussed and put in there. And she said, choice power. And she discussed about the power of every choice that we make. There's a power in every decision that we make. And that's a part of what will give you a greater sense of self-empowerment is if you use that power in each decision wisely. And that became the journey. So with musicians, I think that there are several challenges. There's also the challenge of trying to organize their time. You know, if a musician wakes up late and wants to practice and then wants to go to a rehearsal and then to a gig, they're usually late for everything. So the organizational skills are an extremely important part of success to achieve what we're looking to achieve.
How much do you think, I don't think this gets talked about a lot, but loneliness on the road or on tour, you go from this huge high of playing for thousands of people, and then you're sort of back in a hotel room or on a bus or wherever. How much is loneliness a challenge for folks that may lead to alcohol and drugs or whatever?
Yeah. Well, great question, David. It's really serious. Okay. To me, if I'm traveling and I'm on the road and doing it, I surround myself with great people. When I get back to my hotel room, if I'm not practicing on a practice pad like I did when I was younger, or if I'm not calling my family or answering emails or doing things, I utilize the time not as loneliness, but as office time. So now, because of the advent of having our computers and our phones the way they are, I utilize all of my downtime to continue the momentum of my career, so I don't let myself get lonely. And there's a difference between loneliness and being alone.
You bet. Solitude, right?
Yeah, I like being alone.
Sure.
I just, on this recent trip, I just got back from Italy. My wife and I took a trip. When I landed, we went to Lake Como. And Lake Como is this beautiful lake in the northern area of Italy. It is just absolutely gorgeous. The lake, the surrounding village, the restaurants, the food, the fresh fish, the homemade pasta, the gelato that I wanted to just put my face in it, all of that. And at one point we just sat down on a bench looking at the lake, enjoying the gelato for about an hour, and we didn't say a word. So there are those moments that we can cherish, just taking it all in. And I always say, counting my blessings. There's a great song from the movie White Christmas. If I am tired and I can't sleep, I count my blessings instead of sheep, and then I fall asleep counting my blessings.
Awesome. That's gratitude, right? And
that's another word that's on the chart.
Yeah.
Gratitude. Yeah. Gratitude is a very important word to study. So each of these words, what I do in the book is I kind of like the first part of the chapter, I explain the full graph, the full chart. And then step by step, I go back and I describe each area of the chart and each word. So one of the chapters, chapter 18 and 19, are two of the biggest chapters, because I take each word and I give you the definition of the word. I give you how you can utilize the word in your life, and we really kind of analyze each word. And then I tell a story about that word. So when I speak about perseverance, I give the definition. I speak about ways you can use it. Then I tell a story about perseverance. Then I go to the next word. So I really kind of get these words down to a point where we have to understand each of these words carefully. And as you said, gratitude. This is a word that is so important, to be grateful for what we have. Now, we can sit back and say, I want more.
Right.
I'm not motivated by material things. Mm-hmm. I'm not motivated by money. Mm-hmm. I only love something if it can love me back. Mm-hmm. So when someone says, "Man, I love my car," it's I don't love my car. My car's plastic and metal. Right. It's a tool that delivers me from one place to the next place. It does the job well. Right. That's it. It's a tool. I don't love my hammer either. That's a tool, you know. So it's the concept of, and each of these words that I talk about are tools. Right. So I want to understand the tool so I can know how to use it.
Yes. And maybe the exception to that rule for you might be the drums, because you love your drums, right?
Well, and again, that steps into a whole nother world now. The drums are a living being.
True.
So
right.
They're alive. So that's a different scene.
And any instrument, right? It brings us so much joy. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that's great, that cultivating gratitude. And I love what you said just a minute ago, too, about the focusing your time, because I hear a lot of folks who on the road, that loneliness, if you can really design and focus your time so that doesn't, get into the equation. And, people are away from their families. More and more I hear folks trying to travel with their families as well. So, but I think cultivating gratitude in all of that is important. Some of the other stuff that I saw in the book, I want to ask you about, sort of maybe give us a brief overview of what it means.
Yeah.
One thing you write about is success means failure. That's antithetical to a lot of folks. What do you mean by that?
Well, I say in the book, success means failure and failure means success. You talk to the greatest successful people, the Steven Spielbergs, and they will tell you of their failures, of where they failed and where they learned. And that is the university of life, where you can see where you failed, get up, brush yourself off, start all over again, and continue. That goes to perseverance. That's a different tool. And once you get back up and go again, now you're starting from a different place mentally. You're starting from a place of experience. Wisdom is a combination of experience and knowledge. Knowledge alone does not give someone wisdom. I've got people that I know of that are brilliant as far as they know information. They'd be great on Jeopardy. They've got just tons of information.
Right.
But they're not necessarily wise people. Sometimes they make foolish decisions and do things that are not in their favor, but yet they're very knowledgeable. So knowledge and experience. Now, experience is when you put this knowledge into action. When you put that knowledge into action, what you learn from that action is what gives you experience. Now, when you combine knowledge and experience, that's where wisdom lives. So in my search for wisdom, which I search literally every day, I am in search of wisdom. How can I become more wise so I know when to speak, when not to speak, and how to adapt to every situation in a positive and fruitful and empowering way? So that's part of my personal quest in what I do. But again, that's where the understanding of how we adapt to every situation and what I learned from. So I have had great failures in my life, business-wise, where I've invested in certain things that didn't work out, and I saw how it went wrong. I saw how it fell apart. Much of it was my mistakes that I made, and much of it was people that I was entrusting with that I didn't read them well enough, and they made mistakes, and I kept on going with their mistake until finally the mistake became a financial burden, and I had to step back and say, well, I can't afford this anymore. What's going on here? So I had to learn at that point. Success, when something happens successful and you achieve closer to the goal that you're going for, well, I got to stop and evaluate now what made that successful. So I have to keep on evaluating the success and keep on evaluating the failure. Hence, success equals failure, because you're always going to fail, and failure equals success.
I think that's a powerful mindset to keep in mind as well, because it's really about learning, not stopping or giving up, when we fail, but those are stepping stones, learning from it, whether it's about music, investments, relationships, learning from all of that and keep getting better, keep getting that wisdom.
Absolutely. And that's where the next part of it is to come in, to become a constant learner. Mm-hmm. Now, a constant learner means, at least for me, that if I take music, I want to continue learning about music. I'm still studying the drums. I'm still trying to learn more about that. I've got a lot to learn. I've been playing drums professionally for 54 years, mm-hmm. and I still see myself as a student of the art form. There's still so much more opportunity that I don't have control over or knowledge over, that I'm still pushing myself. When I come to the constant student of life, well, not only do I want to become a better person to everyone that I meet, I want to be a better person to my wife. I want to be a better person for my boys, for my friends, for my students. So I want to keep on improving that value of who I am. And that takes time and constant learning. So once we commit to accepting to be a constant learner, that's a really important, the constant learner. I've got to embrace that. And the word that I like to use is I need to surrender to it. I need to surrender to constantly learning, which means I will always be a student. You speak to any master in any field, whether it's sculpturing or dance or theater or music or architecture or whatever it is, and they will continue to tell you that they are constant learners in the evolution of developing their skills. Now, think of it this way. I was just in Milan, Italy, and in Milan there's this, all the churches are called Duomos. And I did a tour of the Duomo, and this Duomo, it's a huge church. It's forget the religious part of it. It's just a work of art. Right. They started it in the mid 1300s, and it took 600 years to build. The last door, like a 25, 30-foot door that was put on, was put on in 1965. That's when the church was finished.
Powerful.
So this perseverance and discipline and going to see this art, it really is a lesson in each of these people that built on it through generations, kept on learning from each other and kept an open mind of how they can build this to be this great structure that it is.
And I want to clarify too, when you're talking about surrender, I think you said surrendering to the art form. That doesn't mean surrender as in the aspect of giving up, but surrendering as being knowing your right place, having humility, gratitude, and serving the music, basically. When it's
absolutely, and those are all words. Humility is another word, and maybe another time we can go down each of the words and we'll step into it. But humility is another word. It is surrendering means I'm going to keep myself to have an open mind, that I will allow myself to continue to learn and keep my mind open. So if a new idea comes in, even though I'm 66 years young now, when a new idea comes in, if this idea comes to me, even from somebody younger than me, if that idea comes to me and I feel I can utilize that, I would be a fool not to use it,
right.
Not to apply that to my life, thus to make my life better. So I have to surrender to the knowledge, surrender to the experience, surrender to the moment, live in the now. Live in the now, in the moment, and surrender to it. And what that does by that surrendering, it empowers me.
Right. So somebody as accomplished as you, playing, for 55 years and not thinking, I got it all figured out. I've mastered this. I don't need to learn anything more. You're staying open to all of that. That's pretty incredible. So.
Oh, yeah, I am my worst, as many artists are. I'm my worst critic. I'm just my worst critic.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes you a great teacher as well, is that openness and that surrendering. So kudos to you for doing that. So a couple more things from the book that I'd love to have you sort of riff on that I was attracted to. Some of the techniques for personal encounters and dealing with adversity for musicians.
Yeah, boy, there's the section of the book where I talk about, there's three sections of the book. The first section, I kind of intro the concepts of it. The second section, I discuss the building of the actual cycle. And the third area are just techniques and concepts for applying this. Yep. And the choice of being positive, adversity. We're going to have people that are going to disagree with us. We're going to always have people that are going to be negative around us. So when someone negative comes up to me and is looking for an argument, I allow that person to entertain myself. I don't let them suck me into the argument. They could be telling me, Dom, you're ugly, you're stupid, and I'll just keep on smiling and say, you're probably right. I'm not as good looking as a lot of people. I'm not as smart as a lot of people. So I think I qualify for ugly and stupid. That's a good observation. Thank you so much. I said, thank you so much. And I'll go with them. So I deflect their desire to want to get me angry. I'm not giving them that satisfaction.
Right. Yeah.
So dealing with adversity is that when someone comes up, the other day I was parking my car and I go to pull into a space and a guy pulls in real fast in front of me, and he gets out of the car and starts yelling at me. I had my directional on. I was waiting. The guy also came out, and I just kind of went into a different space. There were plenty of other spaces there, and when I got out, the guy came over to me and says, that was my space. And I said, I'm so glad you got your space. I am so happy. I said that I almost got your space. Oh my gosh, the space I'm in now, that's my space, and I made a mistake. So I thank you so much for informing. I'm going to always know that this is your space. And I kept on talking to the guy so he couldn't walk away. And I said, I do this many times. Sometimes I take people's spaces. I once was in church and took an old lady's seat, and it was her space. My gosh, I may end up going to hell because I sat in her seat. So thank you so much for me taking your space. And I kept on going on for like 20 minutes. And the guy just stood there. He couldn't get away.
Right.
So I just kept on bringing this guy to a point of finally he goes, listen, he goes, oh, next time take my space.
Right. Yeah.
I said, have a great day. And I left. So to me, I'm able to tell that story now with humor and jest, as opposed to me saying, this SOB took the spot like I had my direction on. This freaking guy, I'll take him out in the back. You want to fight? Why even go there? Right. So I go to a different area in life. So therefore, every negative story that would normally be negative, I end up having a funny story out of it.
Yeah. Right.
And that's just a technique in the desire to not be sucked into the moment of negativity. There's never a win. There's never a win out of that.
Right, and I think that's great. One of the things I think about when I hear stories like that, or I try to practice, I don't always get it, but it's sort of like the emotional Tai Chi, right? You're just sort of letting the opponent roll off of you and not getting into that power struggle. And obviously, depending where our energy is, how tired we are, cranky, whatever, sometimes we got it, sometimes it's got us. But the more you practice, just like music.
Exactly. The more you practice, the better you get at it. And I never let myself get cranky. Getting cranky is almost like an excuse for that doesn't show gratitude and that doesn't show humility. Yeah. To get cranky, what's going to make me cranky? If I wake up and I'm tired, well, I'm a little tired, so I'm still going to have a great day. What happens if this becomes my last day in life? Right. And if I'm cranky and it's my last day of life, I'm going to be pretty annoyed that my last day of my life I ended up allowing myself to be cranky. Yeah. So I'm going to allow myself only to be happy and positive every day. And my wife does this so well. She's always that way. It's so great to see. And with that, listen, if it is my last day on this earth, I'm going to go out smiling and happy in a win-win scenario that even though I might not have been finished with my chores that I have on this earth, I gave it my best shot, and I'm going out thumbs up.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. That's fantastic. That, to me, seems like a fortune cookie right there, but you also give us more, Dom's fortune cookies in the book. I'm curious, can we maybe sort of summarize or wrap up a little with a few fortune cookies that come to mind in addition to that one?
Absolutely. In the fortune cookies, what it came down to is, when I read fortune cookies and they give you these boosts of phrases in there, I get a kick out of it. So I ended up inspired as I was writing this book. I've got over 150 personal original quotes that are in the book. And so I started writing these quotes down. and I kind of put them throughout the book the way it is. And then one chapter, I put all the quotes in that one book. And there's a quote, like, for example, like I say, some people make waves, some people ride the wave, and other people spend all their life looking for the beach. Yeah. You got to choose. You really have to choose which one of those you want to be. Right. That's a choice. I always say on this one here, time is not always on our side, but our choices are. Our choices are on our side if you make the right choice. Time's going to keep on going. Time's against us. Right. But the choices I can make inside that time are really in my control. Yeah. One of them I said is, if at first you don't succeed, you're in good company.
Right. Just like all of us, right?
Yeah. Not everything's going to happen the first time.
Right.
So you're going to have to struggle and work towards the second time. So there's a whole chapter of all these original quotes, and it's just really kind of fun to see.
And I love it. This is great. Folks can tell folks where they can pick this book up, Dom, please.
Well, I have it now on my website, domfamularo.com. It's on the website for the hardcover, but I'm also now working on having the book digital, so people can go back and get the book digitally. They'll see it on all the different digital audio books and iTunes. It'll be available digitally where they can download it, not only to hear it and have it there, but they can download the book and be able to read it on a digital version also. So we're getting that all together, and it's been fun and exciting that the book is selling in over 30 countries. And some of the letters and some of the emails that I get back from people, and sometimes I get handwritten letters. It's amazing.
Really?
From people, from around the world. And some people say, I wanted to handwrite this, even though I'm 20 years old and I could have emailed you, but I wanted to handwrite this so you can see my personal effort in thanking you for some of the direction that the book has given me. It's opened up my eyes, it's opened up my mind, and I'm surrendering to a more positive attitude. And every single day I work on empowering myself. So when I get that in a handwritten note, it's pretty overwhelming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Talk about gratitude, right? So
really.
That's really amazing. Go to domfamularo.com. It's the cycle of self-empowerment. I have the audio version, and man, your voice is spot on. It's like just powerful. Dom, we've been talking a lot about a lot of great mental health, motivation, and mindset issues. One of them is gratitude, and I'm so grateful for you and grateful to you for being on Rock Therapy today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Good luck, and we'll touch base soon.